Hello, everyone. Thank you, Pete and Gina, for a wonderful introduction. And good morning and good evening, depending on where you are. And thank you so much, Ankit, Swapnil, and Surender, to join this panel discussion with me. All right, so we'll quickly start firstly covering our theme, which is around reliability. So, and how do we ensure reliability in today's world? And how do we navigate through the challenges that AI data generates, right? So there has been a significant increase in data generated using AI. Like all of us are using it today, right? People are now utilizing AI generated content to write articles, blogs, and even research papers. This artificially generated data is increasingly being used as the foundation for AI model training, with models being trained on vast amounts of internet data. Now, in the era of AI, it is crucial to ensure the reliability of this information produced by AI. Companies must implement robust data verification mechanisms and recognize the importance of domain experts in this process. As we talk through this panel discussion, we are going to address some of the key important topics in this case. Also, one of the key things to remember is how do we eliminate hallucinations and biases in AI responses, right? Prioritizing ethical AI should be the need of the hour. Okay.
Yeah, I think sorry for the glitch. There's some glitch, right? So the fourth one, which I was saying, was regulatory compliances, right? If you have unreliable data, you can definitely fall into various traps of compliance, and you can be faltered, right? The fifth, which is the most important, which all of our businesses are based on that, customer satisfaction, right? If you have your customer who are not trusting your output, there could be a big dissatisfaction, right? So which could lead to your loss of customer, pipeline customer, with you, right? So I think these are top five things I feel are very important, uh, and definitely you need a lot of due diligence and proper implementation of data pipelines to ensure your data should be reliable. Sonal, that's my view.
Wonderful, wonderful. You talked about the trust factor here, right? So, Swapnil, if we take a step back, right, it is important to know how AI arrives at its conclusion, mainly from the thought of how it can prevent biases. What is your take on that?
Sure, Sonal, thank you. So totally agree, right? To prevent biases, we need to understand how AI is making decisions. And for me, it applies throughout the life cycle of the model development. So Ankit touched upon the data. That's when it all starts. Where are you sourcing your data from? Is it accurate? Is it representative? Is it diverse? Recently, we heard a lot of goof ups around facial recognition systems. So make sure, like, if you're building something, you have enough samples across the different subsets, making sure individuals from different age groups, gender, skin tones are covered in your sample data. So that's like a first step when you're building the model. Next step you go to is modeling. So the type of modeling approaches can have impact on bias as well. Ensemble models typically prevent the bias from happening because they are like aggregations of bunch of models. But then there are other techniques as well, right? Resampling, reweighting, adversarial debiasing, and all of that. So make sure like we think through that and apply accordingly. And the final thing I would say there is having some kind of a bias audit or like more like ongoing governance around it, build some fairness metrics around disparity. So I come from banking industry. So if you have a loan approval system, track if your loan approval system for different racial group is significantly different. If it is, that's your cue to go back and look at your data and modeling and all that. So it's a ongoing challenge to prevent the bias, and we need to look at the all the different components within the life cycle.
Right, right. Great. All right. Yes, you talked about governance as well, right? So I totally agree how important governance is when it comes to, especially, that's what we are talking about, in fact, when we talk about reliability here. So, Surender, as we talk about this, the world we live in changes so often. And the AI, especially on top of that, every new day you wake up, you see something new about that happening, right? So, how would AI change here? What kinds of system do we design or ensure that we get accurate data over time?
Sure, yeah. Thanks for bringing this up, Sonal. Yeah, and I would like to kind of analogically connect this thing. Basically, when we were in school, we used to study a very important law in thermodynamics, and that was second law of thermodynamics that tells you about the entropy of the universe is constantly increasing. Okay, it's continuously increasing. So, so in a system, we can say that as the time progresses, the universe tends to become more disordered or chaotic. Okay, so analogically, same applies to the data world. The amount of data that is getting generated daily is increasing the data entropy. Okay, and the introduction of AI models basically generative AI has increased it by many folds. Okay, so AI generating a lot of data on daily basis. It's maybe it's random data, it's biased data. Sometimes it is even fake data. Okay, so the chaos or randomness is increasing, but we also need to understand that we are in very early stages of AI. Okay, right now there is an AI war going on in open and closed source capacity, and certain organizations might be bypassing a few constraints or checks that should be there in first place. But we also need to understand that we are moving towards creating better systems for tomorrow. And when this thing approaches maturity, when this chaos settles, we will see clear advantages and disadvantages of these systems. Okay. So when you are using any large language model or Gen AI system specifically, we need to understand the data and subject before we start utilizing it. You should have enough subject knowledge. You should have a clear understanding of the domain that you're working in so that you can actually handle the biases or inaccuracies. It could be the selection of model. So based on the industry, when you're working in, you can select a particular model. It could also be related to uh, specifically selecting the data that you're going to use. So it is better to refer to your source of information, okay, and then use LLMs. So instead of using the LLMs directly, you could have a knowledge base of your own. Okay, maybe you don't want to use the LLMs in its full capacity or AI systems in their full capacity. You just want to use them for semantic search kind of operations. Okay, so you can have your own knowledge base, and then you can ask the models to actually uh, interact with your data and give you the right set of information. And when we talk about this kind of use cases, then there are many ways you can actually put in place so that you can actually deal with the biases and hallucinations that are getting generated by these models. So going forward, when we talk about the future, okay, when companies are basically creating these kind of solutions on top of their own data sets, they need to make sure that they are focusing more on the evaluation criteria, because it is the it's the most critical thing that uh, we should focus on while we are designing the AI systems. Okay, we should constantly use the techniques like prompt fine tuning, prompt designing, or using like few shot learning or a chain of thought kind of mechanism to constantly changing our prompts and fine tuning our models to actually get the right or relevant data. And while evaluating, we can also use a technique that we can use one model to generate the data and other model to verify the information. Although it might not be correct, and sometimes it will tell us that the information that we are getting is correct, but then we also need to have a human or domain experts in the place, which can actually verify the information and can give us early feedback that we can utilize. And then we can, on top of that, we can provide our feedback to the model, and then it can improvise from there. Yeah.
True, true. Can't agree more with you, Surinder. Yes, having said that, Ankit, so reliably generated AI data is the cornerstone of it's the cornerstone of responsible and effective AI development. When we talk about all of this, do you want to emphasize on how important is human in the loop element?
Yeah, the importance of human in the loop in AI development cannot be overstated, right? But it's very essential to have it as one of the critical components and a very comprehensive approach when we are building reliable AI and responsible AI systems, right? Let me break it down into probably again top five things which I view, right? Again, data quality and diversity. Human can play a vital role curating, cleaning, validating training data, right? Second is model oversight. When models are getting built, human expert can be very crucial in monitoring model outputs, identifying errors, giving unexpected behavior, right? That's second one. Third, ethical considerations. Again, as we know, our data could have biases, right? Human can bring that nuanced understanding of the societal impact, navigate various complicated ethical dilemmas, right? So I think that's the ethical one. Fourth, contextual understanding, right? Again, human insights can be very invaluable when we are interpreting the output of AI. Fifth, continuous improvement. Again, humans can give a lot of feedback loop back to the system so that it can develop, right? Again, a classic example of this is when we are seeing our LLMs which are getting built, right? There's human in the loop implemented at each stage, right? Again, data curation and labeling, prompt engineering, output evaluation, feedback, contextual understanding, right? Iterative testing and refinement. All of these steps, human in the loop is used, and that's the reason we get such beautiful output of the bigger closed source model. Yeah.
Well said, Ankit. Absolutely. Technology can work to your benefit if you know the right way to use it and use it responsibly. Organizations improve transparency and provide explanations for the decisions made by AI systems based on the underlying data.
That's a very key consideration, especially as I said, I come from banking and highly regulated industry, so we can't have like really the black box models. As I think through it, first thing is the principle I follow is always start simple. Before applying any sophisticated neural network or GAN type architecture, like think through whether the scorecard would work, right? So start with the simpler techniques, and then that gets you the transparency and explainability aspect. The related concept around being simplistic here is even in terms of communication, don't use like technical jargons with your users and other stakeholders who you want to convince, right? I mean, it's easier to say I use some convolutional neural network and extracted some features and softmax activation. Just say that AI identified this is a duck because it has a web feed, right? So that translate it for them, and that builds that transparency and explainability for the your key stakeholders. Sometimes it doesn't cut it, like the simpler methods don't cut it. Then you have to use some sophisticated techniques, but then think about how can you bring it down to explain it to everybody. And there are again a lot of techniques, gap values, feature importance, attention maps, right? So you should leverage all that, whatever makes sense. And final thing I would say here is the documentation. Make sure everything is for transparency purposes. Everything is documented. Where did you source the data from? Maybe you had access to some data and then you augmented data. What was the training process and the modeling approach? And all of that thing. So all these three things, if you do, like go simple, try to find way to explain things even if they are not simple, and then document, will help you get there in terms of transparency and explainability.
Right. All right. Welcome back, folks. We are back after a slight technical glitch. Thank you, Swapnil. So, Surinder, we talked about biases, how they get introduced into AI generated data, right? What would be your thought in terms of how do you think that we can eliminate or mitigate these biases?
Yeah, so basically, yeah, it's a very common concept in data science or machine learning uh, terminology, that you need to understand your data and then you need to see if there are some biases in your data. Okay, for example, biases can come from different types of, like, from different uh, uh, places. It could be maybe your training data is having a bias, maybe your algorithm is having a bias, or maybe some human is there in place who is putting in the data manually, and or she might be introducing some bias in the system. Okay, and again there are some, let's say, some feedback loops in the system. Okay, and AI systems that are learning from those feedback loops, those user interactions, can reinforce and amplify existing biases. Okay, so having said that these kind of biases are existing in nature, we need to take some precautionary measures so that we kind of eliminate these biases. First one is, we need to make sure that when we are collecting the data, we need to have the diverse sample of the data that is representing the entire population. Okay, if you kind of take data only for a certain set of communities, or let's say a particular demography, there are high chances that you are introducing bias in your models, and your model might not be predict for a larger population. Similarly, uh, when you are using a particular model, you need to make sure that the model, when it was trained on a particular data, for example, if you are using transfer learning and you are using an already your existing trained machine learning model, you need to make sure the data was trained on uh, enough sample that it has a diversity included in the data. Okay, and also we can also have humans in the loop. Although human, if they are manually putting the data and then they are generating the data, that could be a dangerous thing for an algorithm because they could be generating some biases. But then it's always good to have humans in the loop. They can actually verify the data. Okay, what kind of data is there, what are the data annotations and data evaluation. So these kind of things the humans can actually verify and evaluate in the system. And again, we also need to have some sort of transparency or explainability component in your model. So when you are working on machine learning models, always have some sort of mechanism that can actually provide some explainability. For example, we have libraries like SHAP. They can actually explain your data. They can actually explain the process that is happening. And last and the most important thing is the continuous monitoring and updation. So you need to have a continuous monitoring in place of your algorithm so that whenever you see that your bias or your metrics or performance metrics is going down because of some sort of drift that is happening in production, it could be in data or model, you can actually take care of you can actually take care of this and you can have your retraining strategy in place.
True, true. Well said, well said. Yeah, Ankit. So, coming back to you, right? We are in a world of data that is so rapidly changing, right? And data is the backbone for everything. So, how do we validate data here, right? How important do you think is the role of domain experts here when it comes to data validation? And also, how can companies strike a balance between utilizing AI generated data and involving domain experts in the content creation process?
Yeah, thank you. Great question. So if you see, what does a domain expert bring? They bring the contextual understanding of that domain and the decisions what the experts take human with human intelligence now augmented with AI or analytics, right? So that's what they bring. Now, if you see domain experts definitely. Let me take some example, right? So in medical research, right, when this large set of data, okay, and let's take an image, right? Probably a cancer image for pancreatic cancer, right? That can get so complex. You need domain expert that is a doctor to go at a level and annotate each data, right? When you do that, that only could be fed in your CV, computer vision models, which can actually identify that as a malignancy, right? So you need such level of expertise with domain experts who can really understand the data and bring that contextual understanding to that whole thing, right? Again, the second example probably I will take is lawyers, right? Again, when we are using generative AI and AI models for legal summarization and input, right? If you don't have those domain experts who can actually understand, how will you be able to understand what's the output which is coming, right? So you need that contextual understanding. I think that's the major thing what they bring on the table. Again, I think we are moving from human decision making to hybrid decision making, right? That is also one major point where the domain experts can work and train fellow humans how to take that decision. When you work in a hybrid decision making world, when you're using your intelligence plus AI, the domain expert specifically can come and help train your employee, train your workforce to do that, right? I think these are few areas I would highlight are the key ones. There would be definitely more, but again, that's my view.
Great, great, great to know that. Yeah, Swapnil. So, Swapnil, how do you think organizations can improve transparency and provide explanations for the decisions made by AI systems based on this underlying data that we all are talking about, right? What kind of ethical considerations should be taken into account when we are utilizing this AI generated data for content creation? How do you explain that?
So who doesn't use AI these days for content creation, right? With all the social media posts and everything. So it's a very important question and needs to be thought through, right? But few things I want to point out. One thing is just being authentic about it. Nowadays, with so many deepfakes and everything, social media, some of the companies are doing very good job. If an image is generated by AI, they are clearly labeling it AI generated. So if you are using content, a person or an organization which is AI generated, maybe mark it accordingly, AI generated or AI assisted. It generates trust. It's about managing expectations of your audience, they know that, okay, there is maybe your content plus the AI portion to it. So that's really important in terms of ethical considerations. Second thing I would say there is a real risk of a plagiarism, because AI can be real notorious in creating a content which is very similar to the original narrative created by somebody else. So that's where you need to think through again as a individual or organization whether there is any risk of plagiarism in the content created. Uh, we when writing research papers and all that in our college days, we used to take it through the plagiarism detection tools. Maybe we should do that with the AI generated content as well, just to make sure. And if there is something, attribute accordingly. Again, it goes back to that trust and transparency aspect. The final thing I would say here is about being ethical is respect the privacy of individuals. Of course, they have their own rights for their private information, but again, if you're using it for content generation, there is a risk that it can be misused. So in terms of then privacy, plagiarism, as well as the authenticity purposes, I think those are the three lenses we can have. And then there are many more, right? The bias aspect and the governance aspect. But these things we should keep in mind when thinking through the ethical implications of AI.
True, true. Well said. Yes, Surinder. So, Surinder, what do you think? What kind of steps organizations can take to prioritize ethical AI and ensure responsible use of AI generated content in today's era?
Yeah. So Sonal, as you see this AI era, I mean, it it started with the Chat GPT introduction in 2022, and now it is moving at very fast pace. And I remember a very funny incident actually. Last year, I was talking to one of my friend, and he told me that AI is not going to take our jobs because see the models that these days we are having the AI model, they are learning from text data. Okay, they are reading lot of text, but you know how humans learn. Humans actually learn from the visualizations. Humans learn from pictures, videos, scenarios that we see around us. Okay, and then I slept peacefully like AI is not going to take our jobs. And fast forward 6 months, you see here we have multi-models in picture. We have multi-models already, and they are kind of uh, groundbreaking some of the realities that are happening around. Like they can explain you different scenarios, they can do a lot of analytics on videos, audio, whatever kind of data you give to them. And definitely when something grows at this pace, okay, there is definitely some constraints or some checkpoints that they are missing. They are definitely going in competition, but they are not checking all the constraints, all the checkpoints in place. So now it becomes very important for us, like because AI at the end is going to be useful for humanity. It's going to ease our jobs, our works on day-to-day basis. It's going to help us take those informed decisions at fast speed. But then we also need to understand that there is a very huge responsibility that lies with the organizations, that they need to make sure that we are leveraging the technology, but also we are ethically compliant. Okay, we should have the bias detection softwares in place. Okay, where we can use the AI driven tools like fairness indicators or Aquidas to detect and actually quantify the biases in data sets. Okay, and we also should, so for example, if the organizations are using the AI systems uh, s- uh, in their organization, they are using they are doing some projects using AI system, they should have some explainability tools implemented over there, like Lime and Shap we have already, so that they can actually explain some of the aspects. And also the organization should have some ethical AI training programs and certification programs for their employees, not just for the technical teams but also for the wide a wider audience that is there in the company, so that they understand what are the complications if we do not follow these standards. Okay, the big organizations, or it could be a small organization as well, but I'm talking about from the industry point of view, that they should also partner with various educational institutions and universities to actually fund the research that is going on uh, uh, in ethical direction. And also they should collaborate and work on research with these organizations. They should also have some hackathons and competitions in place, that people are encouraged for these things. People are encouraged to follow the ethical measures. And they also should adopt a multi-layered ethical framework. Okay, and this we should have a community global community that should look into that. So last week I was watching a conference where Sundar Pichai was having an interview with Bloomberg, and he mentioned that we were able to achieve this kind of compliances with nuclear power, nuclear energy, and similar sort of compliances should there be in the AI domain. Whatever models are getting used these days, we should make sure that they are used in the right way, they are used in the ethical way, and we are mitigating all the challenges that these kind of models can pose in front of us. Yeah.
True, true. Can't emphasize more on that, Surender. So I think, having said that, couple of challenges and solutions that we talked about with respect to reliability of this AI generated data, we have to identify and understand biases. We have to ensure there's diverse and representative training data. We should also do regular algorithm audits as well, the models that we are using, and at the same time follow ethical guidelines and standards. And having said that, I think with that, we'll just close our panel discussion for today. Thank you so much, Ankit, Swapnil, and Surender, for your time. And thank you so much for the lovely audience who's watching us out there. Thank you.
Thanks a lot,
Thank you so
Sonal.
much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you
Bye.
so much.